Gwyneth was recently a guest on the podcast The Art of Being Well, where she overshared her current wellness pursuits, which is a normal thing for her, and as expected, a part of the podcast went viral. Media dietitians, including Abby Sharp, journalists, and average TikTokers all seem to agree that Gwyneth has an eating disorder and is promoting restrictive eating and diet culture. So naturally, we have to see, is Gwyneth really this evil? We're going to break down the clip in today's video.
What's your wellness routine look like now?
I just have to pause real quick and say, open-ended question, but it's also a leading question in that she was asked, what is her wellness routine look like now? So she's only going to share all of the good things that she's doing. She's not going to share any of the unhealthy things that she practices. So keep that in mind as we watch this clip.
I eat dinner early in the evening. I do a nice intermittent fast. I usually eat something about 12.
Okay, so honestly, at first, this really is not that bad at all. Intermittent fasting and eating an early dinner are based on this idea of circadian rhythms. And the idea is when you attach it to eating, you stop eating for 12 hours. So when the sun comes up, you're eating. When the sun goes down, you stop eating. And so ideas of closing the kitchen at 6 p.m. or in the evening is really where it stems from. And then intermittent fasting, I mean, there's so much evidence showing the benefits of intermittent fasting, and fasting in general allows your body to perform autophagy, which is cellular repair. So you're not meant to be eating 24/7, so having times of fasting is really beneficial, and Gwyneth is clearly practicing that.
And in the morning, I'll have some things that won't spike my blood sugar, right? So I have coffee.
It's good to have things that aren't spiking your blood sugar. If you have poor regulation of blood sugar and you're eating a lot of things that spike your blood sugar, it increases your risk for obesity, diabetes, PCOS, non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, and just a multitude of diseases. And so having control over your blood sugar is a really good thing. However, I will say her understanding of it seems a little bit confused. She says she eats foods that are not going to spike her blood sugar and then mentions coffee. Coffee is a drink. So her understanding is that of someone who's just doing it for themselves, but not someone who is meant to educate others.
But I really like soup for lunch. I have bone broth for lunch a lot of the days.
Okay, so this is what got people so mad. They're like, bone broth is not a lunch. I beg to differ. A notable brand, Kettle and Fire, they have bone broths that they sell, and 1 cup of bone broth has 10 grams of protein in it. That's a substantial amount of protein, and protein is one of the most satiating macronutrients outside of fat that you can have. And so Gwyneth did not say how much bone broth she was eating, nor the type of bone broth she was eating. If she had 3 cups of bone broth, that's 30 grams of protein, and if she adds some fat into it, it's not as bad as people are making it sound.
To do 1 hour of movement. Then I get in the sauna, I dry brush, and I get in the sauna. So I do my infrared sauna for 30 minutes.
To me, honestly, this just sounds like she's really has the luxury of pursuing all of the wellness trends, because heat therapy, that is a privileged thing to be able to access a sauna and have time in the middle of your day to go to a sauna. And then just think about that a little further. If every single day this is what you're doing, I don't believe it. I do not believe it. Let's keep going.
And then for dinner, I try to eat, according to paleo. So lots of vegetables. It's really important for me to support my detox.
Okay. I will say I'm happy she's following a paleo diet. That means that she does have protein. Paleo diet includes protein, even though she emphasizes the vegetables, which is not surprising to me. She mentions in another video that she has long COVID, so she's really trying to pursue a diet that's anti-inflammatory, and a diet that's anti-inflammatory is very, very high in vegetables. So if she's focusing on that now for that anti-inflammatory effects, good for her. I mean, that's a great approach. And then she finishes saying it's really important to support her detox. That's just wellness jargon that doesn't really make any sense. But overall, there's nothing alarming here. But I want to break down the biggest arguments that people have said about the clip that we just dissected together. The first one being that she has an eating disorder. Now, this one kind of irks me because it's unfair to say that. If we change the situation just a little bit, change a few details, and let's make this person someone who's overweight sharing their food journey, and then looking at that video and saying, oh, well, that person definitely has diabetes. You would be outraged. You should never diagnose a person just by looking at them or having a very brief conversation with them. If people and medical professionals who are online continue to haphazardly diagnose individuals from content they shared online. Over time, it will delegitimize the severity of what is being diagnosed, or even worse, it will make that disease trendy, similar to what we've seen with obesity. Then the second claim is that she's promoting restrictive eating. And the majority of this clip is a dietary recall. And that's one of the components that dietitians look at when they are talking to a patient. And the dietary recall can be the weakest pillar because people just flat out lie, or they just don't know. When giving a dietary recall, people want to put their best foot forward. So they are always sharing all of the good things they eat, and then they act as if the bad things they eat are just very, very sporadic and not very often. And most of the time, you have to ask a lot of follow-up questions to, over time, you begin to see why they have certain nutrition problems. And then they too begin to say, oh, I guess I do eat a little bit worse than I realized. And that's an exciting moment when that happens. But for this to really be, you can't say it's restrictive eating. You have to ask more questions. And some of the questions I'd have for Gwyneth is, you say you eat foods that don't spike your blood sugar in the morning. What foods are there? You only said coffee. You eat bone broth. How many times a week do you eat bone broth for lunch? Is there anything in your bone broth? How much bone broth do you drink? How do you prepare your vegetables? What meats do you eat on paleo? And the list goes on and on and on. And only after gathering those details and asking more questions about what she does on a day-to-day basis can you begin to even consider the fact that she might be doing restrictive eating. All of the responses that Gwyneth got for this podcast clip, she responded, and this is what she had to say.
This was a transparent look at a conversation between me and my doctor. It's not meant to be advice for anybody else.
It was a transparent conversation between her and her doctor. So one, for Gwyneth, why share it if it's transparent and it's just supposed to be between you and your doctor? I think it's an overshare, and oversharing leads to consequences. And then number two, just essentially this is eavesdropping, although you have permission to eavesdrop on a conversation. If you're eavesdropping on a conversation, you're only getting part of the story. And so if you take that and run with it and use it as advice, that is a poor choice for you, and it's not going to lead to good outcomes. So, does Gwyneth have an eating disorder? I don't think there's enough evidence to say that she has the eating disorder. I think Gwyneth is just a woman on a health journey, and she has the luxury and can afford to pursue her wellness in kind of outrageous ways. And she's clearly profiting from her pursuits. It's kind of like her brand now. If you enjoyed this video, thank you so much for watching. Check out my other content where I talk about carnivore diet. What else do I have? Or why you should not say junk food. Anyway, thanks for sticking around, and I'll see you in another video.